Hello, welcome to the Inside the Birds 2023 Fantasy Football Preview Show. I'm Geoff Mosher, of course, with Adam Caplan, and from InsideTheBirds.com. We've got Andrew DiCecco. No need to go anywhere else for your fantasy football info. All the inside intel right here. Three of the best in the business. So here's what we're going to do. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to preview each offensive position in fantasy football. We're going to start with quarterback right now. We'll go through our top 5 quarterbacks. We'll go through a couple of guys that we expect to break out, a couple of guys on decline, and then a few late round sleepers. That'll be our video. We'll do this for running back next week, wide receiver the week after, and we'll finish up with tight ends. That's the video element of this. Also on InsideTheBirds.com, we'll have stories each Tuesday and Thursday with a little bit more in-depth preview. Andrew DiCecco will be writing, I'll be writing, Adam will be a part of the video preview series. So quarterback this show, running back next week, wide receiver the week after, and then we finish it off with tight ends, and you will have the most comprehensive fantasy football breakdown that you can get anywhere right here on Inside the Birds. Guys, quarterbacks. It's the most important position in football. It's the most important position in fantasy football. So we obviously will go through our top 5. I've seen all of your top 5s. We're all very similar. We each have this 4 of the same 5 in our top 5. Okay, so let's break that down to begin with. Adam, the one difference I think you have Josh Allen a little lower. I believe he's your 5th ranked quarterback. Andrew and I both have him still as top 3s. He was, if you do points per game last year, even more than Patrick Mahomes, the top point scorer among quarterbacks in fantasy football. Why are you dropping him to 5th?
Yeah, the thing was, watching him last year under Ken Dorsey, he just didn't look as good as Brian Daboll. The numbers were there in the end, as you were talking about. Plus, he runs a lot, which is huge for fantasy. It's a game changer. For playing fantasy since the early 90s, I mean, whether it's Michael Vick, Steve Young, I can go through all the quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb, obviously here. These guys are game changers. You don't have to throw a lot of touchdowns to be a great fantasy quarterback. You got to be able to, if you're not throwing a lot of touchdowns, you got to run. So Josh Allen did both. Now, the upside is Gabe Davis is back from his high ankle sprain. They didn't add anyone. So that's a little bit disappointing, but they're going to go with a little bit more 12 personnel with Dalton Kincaid, their first rounder, go at tight end to go along with Dawson Knox. There's enough there, but, at some point you do wonder, is he going to run as much? Because this is what curtailed Cam Newton's career and his shoulder. I know from talking to the Bills over the years, like they'll say, yeah, we don't want him to run as much, but they design a lot of runs for him. So maybe this will change. But look, he has to be in your top 5. Runners tend to run, but you would hope for his health that he would stop running as much. But in the end, he's top 5. I just wish they would have added a little bit at receiver.
Yep, nope, no doubt about it. I mean, you can make an argument that the other guys in our tops, which are Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow, have a lot more all-around weaponry than Josh Allen, and the offense has had to go through him, and you wonder if that can continue year after year without taking a major toll or even seeing some regression on Josh Allen. So those are the 4 of the 5 that we all have in common: Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and of course, Josh Allen. So I want to really quickly talk about Patrick Mahomes, because I think you can make an argument, Andrew, that when you get rid of Juju Smith-Schuster, who was a possession receiver, not exactly explosive, and you kind of usher in newer weapons, Kadarius Toney, second year of Sky Moore. We'll see if Justin Watson comes back from his injury, and Justin Ross and Rashee Rice, that you might make an argument that he may have more explosive weapons this year, and maybe you can see a rise in his point. It's hard to imagine a rise in his points per game, but maybe the potential is there.
Yeah, oddly enough, Geoff, he hasn't missed a beat even losing Tyreek Hill. He turned in a career season last year. Throughout his 5 years as a starter, he's averaging close to 24 points per game, which is as consistent as you can get. Has a ton of weaponry around him, and he was MVP last season. I don't see him missing a beat this year. He's my top quarterback.
All right, so the only one differential here is that we each have a different guy in our top 5 to round it out. For you, Andrew, it's Lamar Jackson. You would imagine a return into the top 5. For you, Adam, Justin Herbert. It's going to be the year he really bounces back and puts all those weapons. I got to admit, I had a tough time deciding between Aaron Rodgers, who I think is going to have a major bounce back year, and another guy who I'm thinking will finish this year in the top 5. And we forgot what he did with a whole lot less, but now he's got a whole lot more. That's Deshaun Watson, Cleveland Browns. Great offensive line, really nice weapons with Amari Cooper, right? And who else? David Njoku.
Elijah
Moore came.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good overall team. I can see a return for Deshaun Watson to having 30 touchdowns and 4,500 yards, much like his final really good season in Houston when they were terrible.
I know.
And man lit it up. Deshaun Watson is going to be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football.
Wow.
Wow.
See, I'm feeling Herbert was spending 2 days with the Chargers recently. Kellen Moore is a super aggressive play caller, and they're really deep at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a tight end who's really athletic. So I like him there. Now, the thing is, I think Herbert's he had 38 touchdowns a couple years ago. I got him for 40 this year. It's much different than the Joe Lombardi offense. This is more of an 11 personnel offense, whereas Lombardi runs the Peyton system, which is 12 personnel. Now, Kevin Stefanski, let's go over to him with Deshaun Watson. The question is, will Kevin Stefanski get out of his comfort zone? Heavy 12, some 13, which means 3 tight ends, sometimes mostly 12. We go with more 11 because, Geoff, as you said, Elijah Moore, Mari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's in the final year of his rookie deal, Cedric Tillman, who was a third rounder, could start down the line, plus Njoku. So maybe they'll go more 11 personnel.
Yeah, definitely. So again, top 5, it's always tough. I think there'll be a good fight for that 5th. Maybe Aaron Rodgers gets back there. Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, clearly, and a guy that we didn't have in our top 5, but I think has that potential, especially with what they added in the offseason, could be Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, you bring Calvin Ridley in. You already had Christian Kirk. He was already having a good rapport with the tight end Evan Ingram. Doug Peterson's offense, he's someone that I can see. I think everybody's expecting that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a top 5. I just wasn't there yet. How did you guys feel on Trevor Lawrence? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Not quite top 5. I have him top 8 right now, and I actually really agree with Adam. I think that there's a path for Justin Herbert to have a top 3 finish this year. So if you don't get one of the preeminent quarterbacks this year, I certainly think there's going to be other options if you have the weight approach in terms of quarterbacks.
All right, let's move on. We'll go to about some quarterbacks on the rise. Somebody who can jump into the top 10 this year, maybe top 8, that hasn't been there in the past, or maybe people aren't giving enough love to. Adam, who is that person, that quarterback that is going to have a breakout year?
No, I just want to preface this by saying I'm not saying this guy's going to be a top 10. That's not the point. The point is, I hear you, but could a guy, ADP, right, average draft position, can he outdo his draft position significantly? And the guy is Kenny Pickett. I wrote about him for Pro Football Network. The one thing that's held him back, and I remember talking to some of their front office about this and some of the coaches. Remember last year, he started training camp as the 3rd quarterback, then the 2nd, then the 1st. He just didn't get enough work with the 1s. They should have just threw him in there immediately and let him run with the 1s because his timing was off. This is an unbelievably damning stat for him last year. He was the only quarterback in the National Football League who started over 10 games that did not have multiple touchdown passing games. Think about that. In today's NFL, you can't throw more than 1 touchdown a game. It happened. So now you look what happened here now. He got obviously all the 1s guys in the offseason. He's the guy there. Deontay Johnson, I know he didn't score last season. It's ridiculous. But Deontay Johnson is a good football player. George Pickens is a stud in the making. Allen Robinson as their 3rd receiver. Pratt Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, who's he's got a lot of ability. And Calvin Austin, by the way, I should mention that. I talked to Austin last week. He's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a 2-quarterback league, this is why I put him on my list. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, this is a guy I'm going to target late. He's going to be a value. Pickett's still going late, but he's got a chance to be a breakout player between 22 and 25 touchdowns.
Yeah, listen, to your point, he's right now going between 20 to 22 ranked in quarterbacks.
There you go.
I would say that when you have one thing I look for is when you're talking about trying to evaluate a quarterback who you think has some baseline traits and is a pretty good quarterback, what does he have around him? And as you just mentioned, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, got a good tight end out there as well. They made improvements to their offensive line. Now, of course, the offensive coordinator, we're a little worried about, right? No, I get it. But from what I'm hearing out of Pittsburgh, there's a lot more confidence in what that offense is going to be this year as to what it was last year. And I think the O-line will be a big part of that. So I can definitely see Kenny Pickett outperforming his ADP. Andrew, who is somebody that you see outperforming his ADP at quarterback.
Well, I see Justin Fields having a top 8 finish this year and maybe even creeping into the top 5. I think that he was largely a victim of a poor offensive line, bad receiving core. You add DJ Moore in there. Remember, they brought in Nate Davis, the right guard. Nate Davis is there, and they added Darnell Wright as a right tackle. So I think they really improved that area, which is ultimately going to help him as a passer. I really like what they've done. I think that they're a sleeper team this year, and I think he's going to be with him at the controls. They're going to see it through.
All right, that's an interesting observation on Justin Fields, only because we'll get to him in a minute. But yeah, they certainly tried to give him a ton of help, or a little more help. They added DJ Moore, like you said. They've got Chase Claypool there. Cole Kmet's a decent pass catcher, and the offensive line they've tried to address and make it better than last year. Right now, he's going anywhere between he's everywhere. He's kind of averaging about 6th or 7th among quarterbacks. So I imagine you think that if things go right, he can be a top 5 fantasy scorer.
Yeah, I've seen some cases, Jeff, where he's tumbled down because he was so erratic as a passer, and he was just primarily a runner. But I think that he can be a lot more and really take the next step this year.
All right. The one thing I'll add, and this was so damning. I'm a Fields guy. I mean, I like Fields a lot as a talent, but this is all you need to know about how they felt about him. He averaged around 22 pass attempts per game, which is awful. They didn't trust him. The hope is now, as they added DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and a guy that I really like for the draft is Tyler Scott, who'll back up Mooney.
Yeah.
And they got Chase Claypool now full-time. I know he's had issues, but this guy's got ability. Geoff mentioned Cole Kmet, who just got his contract extended. Robert Tonyan, who could run. There's enough there. And by the way, they were on Isaac Seumalo. He wound up not signing there, but that's why they signed Nate Davis, because they didn't get Seumalo done. So Isaac's now with Pittsburgh. But if you really look at it, the protection should be better. It's now up to Fields and the coaches to trust him. Let the guy throw at least 28 times per game. Is it that much to ask?
Fair enough. So one guy who I think is going to get the chance to air it out and outperform his ADP right now, and he's going anywhere between mid-20s, just like Kenny Pickett as well, 22, 24, 26, is Jordan Love from the Green Bay Packers. Look, I think he's got a good offensive line. They've worked on that offensive line. He's got Aaron Jones. They've just brought in Luke Musgrave in the draft. He's supposed to be one of the best pass-catching tight ends. Believe Christian Watson will take a nice leap. We Eagles fans saw the connection between Christian Watson last year and Aaron Rodgers. So now Jordan Love will step in. He's got a big arm. There's no question about that. He's athletic, and he's in a good offensive system, at least what we've seen with Matt LaFleur. This is a guy who, and I think that the Packers will still try to add a veteran. That's what they're lacking in that wide receiver group. We talked about that with the Eagles a few years ago, where they had a bunch of young kids and needed a veteran. So we'll see if the Packers add one before the season starts. But I like the O-line. I like the amount of weapons they're putting around him. And I like that he's young, hungry, and has a big arm. So I think Jordan Love can be a guy who outperform by the end. But when we're talking about at the end of the year, he'll be ranked way higher than 23rd or 24th among fantasy quarterbacks. All right, let us switch gears and talk about some people who may not perform to their ADP. Adam, give me someone who you think is getting a little bit too much fantasy football love right now.
Well, let's put it this way. This is the guy that I think is going to regress. From a fantasy standpoint. Kirk Cousins was ridiculous last season. First of all, he's not throwing the ball 38 times a game like he did last season. This is a situation where their defense and Ed Donatel, he wound up getting removed as defense coordinator. It was abominable. I mean, it was so bad on the back end. Gave a big play after big play. You saw what the Giants did to them, and they embarrassed him in the playoffs. I know they're not great on the back end, but what they're going to do with Brian Flores, he's bringing his New England defense. It's all about confusion. You don't have to be great on the back end and talent. You just have to be able to get guys who understand what you're teaching them. I'm expecting it to be much better. I'm not expecting Cousins to be in the high 30s pass attempts per game. That's not what you want with him. Now, the only issue with that is, I say this, there's no Dalvin Cook. I don't know how well they'll be able to run the ball with Madison and some of these younger running backs, but from a defensive standpoint, they're going to be so much better. They should not be playing from behind as much as they did.
By the way, 5 primetime games already on the docket this year for the Minnesota Vikings, which is not good for Kirk Cousins. We know he tends to not have his best games on prime time. And I agree with you, Adam. He's right now in that 11 to 13 range for average draft position among quarterbacks, which is not high, but I agree. I kind of think the loss of Dalvin Cook and the fact that they have to integrate a rookie next to Justin Jefferson in Jordan Addison, right? That was their first round pick. And You know, they've got Jalen Reagor, and they're not sure what's going on there. Hawkinson's a nice tight end, pretty good tight end, but he's not necessarily a Travis Kelce. So I agree. I think the opportunity is there for Kirk Cousins, who's yet another year older, to take a step back from where you're seeing him on the ADP. Andrew, who's a quarterback that you don't see matching his ADP right now?
How about Geno Smith? Obviously,
Love it.
the Seattle Seahawks are going to be a team that's right up there among the NFC heavyweights this year. I think last season proved that if you look at his history, it was in sort of an aberration, and really like their three receivers, adding Jackson Smith and Jigba in the draft as well. The two-headed rushing attack of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I think that they're going to be a good team. I just don't think he's going to put up the stats that he did. I think they're going to rely heavier on the running game, and I just don't see him being the reason why they win. I think last year was an aberration.
100%. He'll be targeted. And just to show how all of us think very similarly and see the league similarly, I have three candidates that I put for not matching their ADP. Kirk Cousins was number one. Geno Smith was number two. And partly is not because Geno Smith is bad, but because he had such a good year last year, right? That we're talking about not being able to match that and match the ADP. And along those lines, that third guy I had, Andrew, interestingly, is Justin Fields. I do believe his ADP is pretty high right now, being 7 or 8. I think expectations are too big, and I can see him not having as good of a year, trying to be more of a passer, with not having really wonderful weapons. Everybody knows I'm not a big Chase Claypool fan, and I don't think the addition of that offense is going to make a difference, although you're reading and hearing great things about Chase Claypool coming out of Bears camp. And I just think the league will be a little bit more ready for him. Remember, he finished last year as the 10th highest scoring quarterback in the league. But I also think that's partly because guys like Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Russ Wilson, and even Tua being hurt were below him because they were either hurt or having down years. I don't think all those guys are going to have down years again. A couple of those guys will probably be up, and I think it's going to knock Justin Fields a little bit down. And by the way, I was a huge Justin Fields fan coming out of the draft. I still think he will be good. I just think, unlike Jalen Hurts, who got A.J. Brown and had the best offensive line, was able to just explode into a great quarterback, I just don't know that Justin Fields has enough around him to be top 10 yet again.
That's fair.
Right. And you mentioned the ADP. This is where ADP is crazy. He's going late 4th.
Yeah.
The cost is ridiculous. I can't do that. Now, I did a draft for SiriusXM. We did it at Xfinity Live. I mean, I got him, and I think in the 7th. I'm kidding me. The value's too good. I got to take him here, but 4th is too rich. Way too
Absolutely. Rich. Yeah, that's what I mean, Adam. I think in a lot of the people that I've talked to in drafts I've done, he's tumbled down a little bit and getting passed over by guys like Trevor Lawrence and Kirk Cousins, even in some cases. So that's why I think that there's an opportunity for him to really ascend this year as a passer, and I think that he's going to surprise.
All right, let's shift gears. We'll finish this up with guys that we think you should take a flyer on in the later rounds. Might wind up breaking out, having a great year, and really outperforming his ADP, but you can get him real late. Adam, what do you think?
Well, it still would be Pickett, but I like the Jordan Love call. Yeah, they're the only NFL team. This is ridiculous. They don't have a veteran receiver or tight end. That does worry me. But he's going to run. And remember, this is the 4th year in this system. The system does not change. Still an old school West Coast offense. Now, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, that's the big thing now in fantasy. In addition to best ball, is these leagues where you're super flex, but where you could start 2 quarterbacks. The guys that I would target as my second quarterback, Love would be one of them. Pickett would be another. Anthony Richardson is still a pretty good value. He's another guy because he'll run and he's got enormous arm strength, a lot of talent. They're good enough at receiver. Those would be the quarterbacks, but I really like Jordan Love because nobody wants him. He's going
mid-20s.
He's going like the 15th round.
Yeah, mid-20s among quarterbacks. That's why, I think you're going to see a breakout from him. Andrew, got some late round guys you'd like to take a flyer on?
Well, to piggyback off what Adam was saying, Kenny Pickett is certainly somebody that I see it would be right that would qualify as that. I think the Steelers in general are going to be a sleeper team this year. Now, when no one's really talking about him, but I'm going to go Anthony Richardson, right? I mean, Adam already alluded to his enormous arm. He can run. I think that's going to accentuate the running game and Jonathan Taylor. And he's a work in progress as a passer, right? But I think that having 2 big-bodied receivers like Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman sort of help. You don't necessarily have to be pinpoint accurate with your throws. And I think they're going to help him in the red zone immensely. So I think that he's a pretty high upside player.
Guys, I couldn't agree more. In fact, when you say high upside, We noted that Justin Fields finished 10th last year among NFL quarterbacks in fantasy scoring. I think there's the potential for Anthony Richardson to do even better than that. Now, everything has to go. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be able to be the starter. He's got to limit turnovers, but he's got more to work with this year in Indianapolis than Justin Fields had last year. And I don't think they're going to wait in Indianapolis like they did with Justin to get him involved in the running game. Shane Steichen's there. He just worked wonders with Jalen Hurts. I could see Anthony Richardson really blowing it up if he gets used correctly in the fantasy game. And again, he's a guy who's going, and he's all over the map. I've seen him as high as 15. I've seen him as low as 26. So, his average draft position, he's not way low. You're not going to get this guy in the 15th, 16th round, because I think some people are on to him, but you might wind up getting a top fantasy scorer in year one of him, just like Lamar Jackson's first year, right? A little bit similar, but getting him much later in the draft. I'll finish it off with this. Again, what am I looking for a quarterback in fantasy? Does he have weapons around him? Does he have a good offensive line? And does he have a good coaching staff, especially when we're talking about way down? Guys, Brock Purdy has all of that. He goes in as the starter. He's got McCaffrey. He's got Debo. He's got, who's that other field stretcher they got? Brandon Ayuk. I mean, they have a great offensive line. They have a great offensive philosophy. Tell me he can't throw for 3,500 yards and 25 to 30 touchdowns. I don't see why not if he's a starter for 17 games.
Yeah.
Hey, we're talking about late round here.
No. You're right. And again, I would never draft him as my starter, but as in a 2-quarterback league, sure.
Yeah,
nobody wants him. It's like, if you look at the guys who are in the area you're talking about in the 160s, 170s in your draft, Pickett, Love, all these guys are going very late if they get drafted off. Heck, kickers are being taken before these guys.
There you go. All right.
Richardson, real quick on Richardson. He's going in the 9th round. We got 3.5 weeks left. The hype, if he plays well in the preseason, folks, I'm telling you, the hype will be enormous. Jeff's right. So you might have to take it a little bit earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I guess I'll throw this name in because I think he's got good weapons. And if he winds up outperforming expectations, it wouldn't surprise me, is a Sam Howell. I mean, he walks into Terry McLaurin. He walks into Jahan Dotson, good tight end. The offensive line's not great, but it's better than it was last year. Theoretically, it should be. Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator, and Sam Howell can move around a whole lot better than Carson Wentz was able to. So Sam Howell's a guy I can see as the season goes on. You draft him real late. He's on your bench. And then maybe by their bye week or the second half of the season, if you have an injury quarterback or if you're just looking for a good matchup, Sam Howell may give you 2 touchdowns in a 250-yard game. It's all it takes to win sometimes.
Yeah.
All right.
The only thing I'd say there is because Ron wants to hide the quarterback. He does not want the quarterback to be a factor.
Yes.
Then you've got Bieniemy, as you mentioned, where it comes from the Andy Reid school. So who's going to win out there? It's going to be fascinating.
Well, they hired him for a reason, right? So we'll have to see. He is the play caller. So maybe Ron will loosen up a little bit and let his offensive assistant do the work. We shall see. That's what makes it fun. This has been the first of a 4-week preview of fantasy football. We focused on quarterbacks. Like I said, Tuesday and Thursday on InsideTheBirds.com. Look for our written content. And next week, we will come at you with our running backs preview. So for Andrew DiCecco, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching the Inside the Birds Fantasy Football Preview.